Hey guys, I want to talk about tight fascia and how we can address it. We had Mark, one of our massage therapists, come and talk to the staff and the doctors the other day, and he had a lot of great points about fascia. Had me thinking about how we address that with foundation training, and one of the reasons why we give foundation training to all our patients. So I wrote this little bit here. I'm going to read it out to you. So the spine seeks stability, and we're going to get that out of two ways. So those who do foundation training will remove the fascial binding that holds the spine in compression. So it's getting sandwiched by all this tight fascia. So the fascia runs everywhere, right? It connects everything. It connects all those muscles. It's broad, overlaying everything, and it can definitely bind. It's like a tight suit of compression, if you want to think about it that way. So foundation training will remove the fascial binding that holds the spine in compression. We're fighting against the fascia. So this compression is a form of stability that most have adopted, but it is ultimately a destructive form because the individual is relying on ligamentous and joint tissue, which can only harden, which is our osteoarthritis. So what I'm saying there, what I'm trying to say there is that your spine will seek stability. It's going to compress and it's going to harden and stiffen. Why? To protect the nervous system. It has to. So either it's the muscle that is controlling the stability, or it's going to be relied upon to be the joint tissue and the ligamentous tissue, and that's going to have a lot of fascial restriction along with it. So training our deep spinal muscles, that's the transversal spinalis muscles, or what they refer to as the posterior chain muscles in foundation training, this will create an active stability. So that can not only release to allow for spinal movement, because we do every once in a while need the spine to flex and extend and rotate like it's supposed to, but if we abuse that, it causes problems. So we need an active stability, releasing for spinal motion, but also the ability to engage those muscles to encourage more isolated hip and shoulder motion, which is the ultimate problem, is that a lot of restrictions happen here, the ball socket joints, the hip and the shoulders, because the spine cannot achieve stability, especially our psoas muscle, which we're always talking about, attaches to the lumbar spine, helps hold that length that we need, helps hold that length, open up the disc space, so when we do move, the hip's going to move. And we'll talk about how the fascia is related to that in a second here. Let's continue on with the reading of this. I'm going to repeat it anyways if I don't watch myself. So, are we stretching? And if you consider active lengthening of the spine to tension the fascial binding, then yes, it's stretching the fascia. Are we strengthening? We are targeting the inhibited muscles that have given in to the pull of this bound up fascia. So yes, again, we're strengthening. So the tight fascia is going to fight against muscles we should be activating on the day-to-day. One is that psoas muscle. The others are the posterior chain, because the posterior chain is going to need to relax to allow the spine to compress, because you don't want to actively push up against the fascia. You should actively want to push up against the fascia. You were just not. So anything that's tight, we don't want to push against. And if you think about this, a good example of tight fascia is flex and extend your foot. Pretty easy. If you're sitting, raise that leg up, try to flex and extend again. You're going to notice it's a little stiffer because you're having to work through more things are working and connecting. Even though the ankle is the only thing moving, you've changed that hip position and you've required more movement through that entire fascia. That's kind of what we get with foundation training. I like to use the example of like the arm. So if I'm going to stand up here and I just raise my arm, I notice a few things. My head automatically went that way. My hip automatically went that way. My shoulder raised. If I keep everything really stiff, I'm going to hit that wall. It's that wall of fascia where I just can't raise that arm anymore, but I'm fighting against all that fascia, which is good. If I let it go and I compress my spine, my hip does that, I can get the arm up. And we've just unfortunately trained ourselves to do that for every movement, even breathing. So let's continue on here reading this. Since the fascia is what connects the whole body together, your spine will flex or extend to avoid fighting the fascia, just like I demonstrated. So when you do any movement, even breathing or walking, we can learn to fight the fascia. So with yoga, we are training the spine to avoid driving into the fascial wall we're talking about here. So this will further instability by encouraging hypermobility in certain joints and restrictions in others. So the spine is going to force movement where it has movement, right? If this is moving well in the lumbar spine, it's going to flex and extend there. It's not necessarily going to happen at the hip joint like it should be doing. So yoga can further problems there because we're just forcing where we already have mobility. So you end up having this crazy motion in one place and then restriction in another. And then it's very hard for your massage therapist, it's very hard for your chiropractor to work on you because you have created such an imbalance. It's not that yoga can't be done. So, all right, so fascia wall. So this trains us to move incorrectly. Yoga trains us to move incorrectly. It's good for addressing certain rotational imbalances, but mainly you need to apply and learn these principles first before you can do that. So this style of stretching may have its place, addressing more torsional elements, but should not be used unless the principles of foundation training are understood. So that's the goal there with foundation training, is teaching you how to move, how to breathe better, to attack this fascial binding that's just holding and compressing everyone. Because your spine's going to get stability either way, whether you strengthen those muscles to bring stability, or that fascia just holds it in and the joints and the ligaments start to stiffen and create arthritis to bring stability. It's going to happen either way. So we might as well build it in with the muscle, because the muscle can relax and then it can also engage. It's meant to do that. It's also got a lot of blood supply, so it can heal faster, where your joints don't heal fast. Sometimes they stay injured for a long time. Much easier for the muscles to build up strength than to rely on our joints. So that's foundation training in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes sense. Your spine needs stability. Get there. Start doing it every day.